Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us and being right on time. Thanks for your patience as we have a few people registered this evening, and they may be trickling in shortly. But let's get started. Welcome to the first edition of what will be monthly cooking classes um, that are facilitated by Mr. Chriso Babcock. And Chriso is our healthy cooking classes program educator with Cornell Cooperative Extension, Hudson Valley Shared Business Network. And Chriso is going to be leading us in a recipe of a quick chili this evening. My name is Marcia Sebro, and I'm a nutrition educator with the FNEP program for Cornell Cooperative Extension of Ulster County. And we are glad that you can join us. So tonight is the first of monthly cooking classes, and the second class, which will be next month in December on the 10th, also at 6 p.m. And the recipe is going to be curried squash soup. So using vegetables that are in season, that sounds very delicious. So join us for that one. There's going to be a registration link at the end of this evening's presentation. So just a few housekeeping rules before we get started. Please be advised that this class is being recorded, and by participating, you are consenting to its being recorded. If you feel more comfortable, it's okay if you turn your video off. All participants are in mute mode, and we ask that you stay muted through the presentation. There will be time for questions and answers and comments at the end. And if you do have a question or comment during this evening's virtual class, please enter it in the chat box. Let's see, anything else? I think we are all set, and I'm going to turn it over to Chriso to get started.
Thank you so much, Marcia. So welcome, everybody. We are going to be diving into this chili recipe. Can I just ask, are there folks who are planning to be cooking along in real time? Okay, cool. I see, yep, Trang and Rosalind. Okay, great. And so that's good to know. Cool, very exciting. Okay, so we're just gonna talk a little bit about the recipe before we dive right in. So this recipe is a fairly simple chili recipe. Marcia, can I ask you one question? Just, is it possible, if more people do trickle in, can you keep your participant screen open and allow them to enter?
Yes, absolutely. I also wanted to say, from my view, our boxes are on the right side. So everyone, if you are able to, if anything on the screen gets blocked, you do have the ability to move all these boxes around.
Great, great. Okay. And you can also minimize the up at the top of the box. You can minimize so you only see the active speaker is also an option. Make it a little smaller up there in the corner. Okay, so this is a recipe for a quick chili. The ingredients I'll just kind of talk through really quickly. I know that folks have may have seen the ingredients as they were registering. So we're using a ½ pound of lean ground meat. We're using a medium onion. Using a can of kidney beans, 2 cans of diced tomatoes, 2 tablespoons of chili powder. This is optional, but is a great flavor. There are many other spices you could use, but this is and chili powder is not particularly spicy. It's more flavorful. And then you can do this even more simple than what we're doing tonight, but I've added some garlic, a carrot, and a bell pepper as well for some vegetable variety in there. So,
Excuse me, Chriso.
oh, yeah, of course.
We do have a question. Someone is asking, is red or green bell pepper? Like which one? Does it matter?
Great question. Doesn't matter. I chose a yellow one for this recipe personally, just to add some more colors into the chili, but it's really a matter of taste. Any bell pepper would do. So the total cost of this recipe is about $15, maybe even a little bit less. It's going to be 4 good-sized servings, and the total time to prep and cook this recipe is about 30 to 40 minutes. So this is a great recipe for a weeknight dinner, or to cook in advance, have ready for the week. And before we jump into actually cooking, I just wanted to offer a few quick thoughts. So when you're shopping for canned goods, you can give a quick glance at the ingredients and the nutrition panel, and it's you can find there's a lot of variety in cans. So some canned goods will have added sugar or salt or spices, and others won't. So I was trying to find options that had less sodium or no added salt or sugar. Sometimes they'll add sugar to things like even things like beans will have a little sugar added. So just a pointer that you can, if you look carefully at the cans you're buying, you can avoid some of those things. In terms of vegetable variety for this recipe, really, you could add all sorts of different vegetables to a chili and really make it your own, or make it suited to your family or your taste. So tonight, as I said, we're going to be using a yellow bell pepper and a carrot. You could also add corn, you could add sweet potato, you could add green beans. I've seen some vegetarian chili recipes that use added grains like quinoa to kind of bulk out the chili in place of meat. And you could, of course, make this recipe without the ground beef as well, or use, yeah. So there's all sorts of flexibility, but this is a basic chili recipe that I hope that you can kind of take and run with. Thrifty options here. So this is already a pretty cheap recipe. One way that you could make it even cheaper is you could buy and use dry beans instead of canned beans. This is going to be cheaper. Canned beans are already cheap, but dry beans are even cheaper. If you soak them in water the night before, they'll expand and cook much faster. And a heaping half cup of dry beans, which is really hardly any dry beans from a package, a pound of dry beans, is going to expand and cook into a 15-ounce, a full can. So that can be an option to make this an even cheaper recipe. And then finally, some cooking options. For tonight's demonstration, I'm going to be showing cooking this on a large cast iron skillet on the stovetop, but it could also be cooked in an electric skillet. It could be cooked in a slow cooker or a pot on the stove, and really you wouldn't have to change much to do that. So let's dive into it here. So we're gonna kind of prep all the ingredients first, and then we'll get around to the cooking. Prep time for this recipe is about 10 minutes. And basically, I'm just going to lay out the ingredients here and talk a little bit about preparing all of the different ingredients. This is really a very simple dish. It's a great, easy chili. So we have the canned diced tomatoes in the back there. We got a can of the red kidney beans, onion, bell pepper, and carrot. So you're just going to start by chopping up the onion. can start by just chopping the ends off and removing the outer skin of the onion. And this is a matter of taste. You know, if you want this onion to be really finely diced, then that's an option. If you want some larger, more chopped, some larger chunks of texture in your chili, that could be an option too. Onions are an amazing staple. They keep in the fridge for a long time. They can also be kept outside of the fridge if the room isn't too warm for quite a long time. But I always keep quite a bit of onions, I would say, in the house as just a staple go-to, and they find their way into most of the dishes that I cook, often right at the very beginning. So I often find we're gonna start this recipe once we do start the cooking. We're gonna start with kind of browning the onions, which is an amazing way to bring flavor out of onions. If you start the onions at a low heat, very low heat, and you give them a lot of time, you'll really bring a lot more flavor out of them. And I should say this recipe could actually be cooked even faster. You know, we could easily just be tossing the onions right onto the pan right now and starting as we prep. But for the purpose of this recipe, I just kept the prep separate. So we're gonna just prep everything, and then once we dive into the cooking, we'll cook everything. But if you're a more experienced cook, of course, you could be prepping and cooking at the same time. And once you've done this recipe once or twice, it's a simple, quick recipe. So here we go. I'm prepping this bell pepper. And basically just I've cut it in half, and I'm kind of taking out all of the seeds and the stem, getting in there, taking out some of the kind of white pith on the inside there as well. Bell peppers are really tender. And now I'm actually just gonna rinse the inside of this pepper off, because there's lots of little seeds still, often you'll find, kind of clinging to the inside. Nothing wrong with eating those seeds, but just gonna rinse those off. The bell peppers are very tender. There's all sorts of different ways to prepare them. They could be prepared low and slow, kind of fried in the same way that I was talking about doing onions at the beginning of a saute. They can also be eaten raw, very tender, dipped in hummus or dip or something. So tonight we're going to be adding these peppers actually towards the end of the recipe, so that they still remain kind of fresh and tender, and they're not just cooked as much as everything else. So there'll still be a little tenderness in them, a little crispiness. And again, you know, this is up to you. If you want some larger chunks, you can leave some larger chunks. You can also cut very small if you wish. I'm kind of choosing a middle ground here. Chili is really a cozy, comforting dish, especially on a cold night. There's all sorts of sides that you could imagine going along with this. Chili is great with cornbread. It's great with corn chips. Could be a part of a larger meal if you wanted to cook rice, like a brown rice or some sort of other grain on the side. And this could also be a way to use up to use up leftovers in your fridge. You know, if you have half a pound of meat left over from burgers and you have a can of beans, can of tomatoes, easy enough to, and even with the vegetables, you know, say a few extra vegetables you throw in for variety. So I'm chopping up this carrot. The carrot, on the other hand, is much firmer. This is gonna go and get cooked right towards the beginning of the recipe, because it is much firmer than, say, the bell pepper, which is tender and will cook extremely quickly. So the carrot will be going in a little earlier. And one reason I wanted to add the bell pepper and the carrot is just for some variety of color and texture and flavor. I think it's really nice to have, along with the red and the brown of the chili, to have these oranges and yellows going in there, and to have some bites of different texture and shape. So just setting vegetables off to the side as we prep them, and we're getting close. We're in a few more minutes, we're going to be cooking. How are folks doing who are cooking along? Is this good timing to cook along to? I suppose you're busy cooking, so you can't really answer me, but.
It's good. It's good. Keeping up with your instruction. Thank you.
Good, great. That's great. That's great to hear. Okay, so adding some garlic. Again, this is totally optional. I think garlic is an amazing addition to most meals, and I didn't see any reason to not add it to this chili. Just add a little more flavor, and so you can see what I just did there. I just if you cut the ends off of a fresh garlic clove and you just give it a smush with your knife, with the side of your knife, I find that to be a great way to loosen up the outer skin. And I'm chopping this up pretty fine. This was just 2 cloves of garlic, I believe. And you could also use a garlic powder or a minced garlic, you know, pre-prepared garlic, fresh garlic. And let's just open these cans as well and get these ready to go. So we have 2 cans of this, these diced tomatoes. Could also, of course, use fresh tomatoes if in the summer, or if you happen to have some tomatoes in the fridge that you need to use. I'm not specifically advocating this brand, but this was a brand that I found in my store that, like I was saying, had didn't have many added ingredients, didn't seem to have any salt or sugar added, so I chose it. There's a lot of variety of different products, different sizes of cut, different, yeah, so those are diced very finely. And then likewise, these beans I chose partly because they were low sodium. And interesting, you know, I mean, there doesn't really need to be any salt added to cooked beans, but there is, and often there's other things added as well. So I just chose the option that seemed to have the least added ingredients. You could cook this with black beans or kidney beans or any type of bean, really. This, for the purpose of this recipe, we're doing these red kidney beans. And that's pretty much all the prep. So now we have everything ready to go. And the rest of this recipe is going to be cooking. So yeah, so let's dive into that. So like I said, I'm using a large cast iron, but you could use a pot on the stove as well. You probably don't want it to be too thin bottomed of a pot, because we are going to be doing some sauteing of the onions and the meat right at the early stage. You could also use a slow cooker for this, and start basically in the same way we're starting by turning on the heat and adding just the onions and meat early on and letting that start to cook, and then adding everything else. So many different ways. I just added a little bit of cooking oil. This is just a little bit of olive oil. It's probably not strictly necessary because the meat will release some fat. But because I wanted to start by browning the onions a little bit, I did add a little bit of oil, probably a tablespoon or less, teaspoon of oil, just to get the surface smooth. So we're starting with the onions. Toss the onions on there. And I do have the heat pretty low right now. It's probably like, you know, if you have kind of a 1 to 10 on your heat, I'm doing these onions just at maybe a 2 or a 3 to start to brown them. And I have the meat out and ready to go. This recipe only calls for a half a pound of meat. You could, of course, use more as well if you wanted to. I wasn't able to find just a half a pound, so this is a larger pack of meat, and I'm just going to divide it up and take this package of meat was about 1.5 pounds of ground beef, of lean 15% fat ground beef. And I'm just going to kind of break off about 1/3 of it to be that half pound of meat, and give the onions a little stir every once in a while. Keep them moving around. You can see they're starting to heat up a little bit. You can see some bubbling going on there. So I'm gonna break off a chunk of the meat here. Whenever you're handling meat at home, I like to be really careful with raw meat. So usually after opening, handling, I'll pause kind of right after that step, and I'll wash my hands, and I'll wash any utensils that I was using to handle the meat, to make sure that I'm not, you know, then going on to touch other things in the kitchen and leave little meat juice on things. So I'm just grabbing this. This is about the half pound of meat. I'm just going in. This is ground beef. I'm going in. I'm just breaking it up with my hands. It's very easy to break up with your hands into its little shredded grounds, and I'm just tossing it right into the pan. You could chop it as well, but I find that then you're kind of actually smushing it a little bit, and it gets kind of clumpier. So I like to go in and I like to just kind of break it apart like this. So this will give like little chunks of meat throughout the chili. Ground beef is a great easy way to bulk out all sorts of different meals. Great to make meatballs with, or burgers. In this case, really using it more as the little chunks of meat in this chili. So breaking it up really small would be great for that. And you can see, yeah, now there's some nice heat here. The onions are definitely releasing a lot of moisture and steam. Can give it a little stir. You'll see the meat will start to brown fairly quickly. You want to stir it all around, and you want to just keep cooking it until we're going to keep cooking it, and we're going to keep stirring it until all of the pink has turned to that kind of light brown that you're seeing. Some of it's already there, and you can see some fat is being released onto the pan. If you want to keep this recipe really low fat, you can also pour the fat off of the pan towards the end of this browning the meat step. I chose to actually leave that extra fat in this chili to kind of keep it creamy and dense. That's a nice filling winter food. So if you were making this in, say, a slow cooker, and I keep offering the slow cooker as an idea because I think it's a great way to save time and make things easy for yourself. This first step would be very, very similar. You would be turning the slow cooker to kind of its saute or high heat, and starting with the meat and the onions and getting them going. And then once they're browned and cooked, then with the slow cooker, you could really pretty much add everything else and turn it to slow cook and forget about it for hours. So that is a nice option. So on the pan here, I'm going in, I'm adding the carrots because they are going to take longer to cook than any of the other vegetables. It's fine if they are still a little crunchy, but I wanted to let these cook longer than the canned beans, the canned tomatoes. They're already cooked. You know, when we add those, we're really kind of adding them, and we're going to be melding the flavors together. Everything is going to come together, but we don't actually have to worry about cooking the beans or the tomatoes. They're already cooked. So these are the ingredients that we really want to get cooked before we add everything else, and really fill out this chili all the way. I like to add, so here I'm about to add some garlic. A little close up. You can see there's a lot of simmering going on. And the meat looks like it's pretty much all cooked. All of that dark pink is pretty much gone. I see a little bit of light pink in a few areas, but it is going to continue to cook for another 10 or so minutes. I like to add the garlic not right at the beginning, but actually kind of towards the end of when I'm doing my sautéing. So, but you see, I made a little spot right there in the middle of the skillet or of the cast iron to make sure that the garlic is right on the pan in the fat, which is really nice for releasing the flavor of that garlic. Browning it a little bit, and it really brings the garlic to life. And then once it's cooked there in the middle for a little bit, I'll stir it in to the rest of the dish. There we go. So now we're pretty much ready to add everything else, the beans and the diced tomatoes, and really bring this all together. We've been cooking for about 20 minutes. or no, we've been cooking for about 10 minutes. So you can see this really is a nice quick meal. We prepped for about 10 minutes and now we've been cooking for about 10 minutes. And I'm curious to know, for those of you who are cooking at home, is this still a good pace? This seems like you're on track with.
Yes, yes. The timing is good. Thank you.
Great, great, good to know. Thank you, Train. I would just give everything another little stir. And yeah, now let's start to add the rest of the final ingredients. So we're gonna add these diced tomatoes. You can add the liquid as well. It's a lot of nice tomato juice in there. And you can see this is really gonna bulk this meal out now. So it was looking like a fairly small dish. This is gonna probably more than double it in size, what we're adding. And if you wanted to even make a larger batch of this, of course, you know, you could make a larger batch and save some in the fridge for later in the week. You could make a larger batch and freeze some containers for later as well. Add the beans. You can add the bean liquid if you like. I also sometimes just rinse kind of rinse the bean liquid out of the can and add the beans. Get those last few beans that are stuck at the bottom. So now all the ingredients are here, and all the ingredients that we were really cooking from raw are pretty much cooked. But at this point, we're just going to give the dish time to really come together. So these beans and tomatoes are taking in flavors, and they give everything a good stir. You could probably switch at this point from a spatula to some sort of you know, spoon or something, but I'm just still using the spatula. Seems to be working, and getting everything stirred up there. Mostly, you just want to make sure that things aren't sitting on the hot pan for too long at the bottom. Although now that there's all of this liquid in there, most likely nothing is going to burn at this point with all of this liquid in there. It's still good to give a little stir every once in a while. So like I was saying, the bell pepper is much more tender. So I've saved it for towards the end here. So now I'm adding it. We're just going to cook this for really 5, 6, 7 more minutes. We're getting towards the end of this recipe. The chili is going to be ready soon. You could, of course, cook the bell pepper longer. I just kind of figured as it is a more tender veggie, I would leave it towards the end and have some variety of texture in there. So we have the onions, which have been browned and really cooked to be nice and soft. And then we have the tomato, and we have the bell pepper, which is still a little crunchy at the end there if you add it towards the end. So this could be a time in the recipe too where you could add other ingredients if you wanted to add, say, frozen corn or canned corn, or even you know, take a fresh corn on the cob in the summer and chop that off and add that. Corn is kind of another classic chili vegetable. You could think about adding something like green beans. You could add sweet potato. I think that's veering off of the classic chili slightly, but I'm sure it's been done many, many times. I think, you know, chopped chunks of sweet potato could be a nice starchy addition in there. Like I was saying before, you could add already cooked quinoa or millet or some sort of grain like that, that would give texture, more texture. So you can see everything's really coming together here now, and there's a lot more liquid. A lot of that nice tomato juice from the tomatoes. And let's add a little bit of spice. So the spicing for this recipe is really simple. We're just adding chili powder. And the recipe actually calls, I think, for 2 tablespoons. I'm only using a tablespoon. Personally, I don't like very spicy food, and I don't find chili powder to be that spicy. But I used a little less. So this is, another matter of taste. You could also add, if you want it extra spicy, there's always cayenne or other ground chilies. There's also a lot of great chili options that have like a deeper smoky flavor. Ground chipotle pepper is an amazing smoky flavor that they create by actually drying and smoking the peppers before they grind them up. And the spice, I find you do want to give the spice a little bit of time to cook into the meal, to really merge and meld into the food. So we've added the chili powder, and we're still going to cook for a little longer, but we're only a few minutes out from this being ready to serve. And you can see this is a pretty good amount of chili. This is definitely a full dinner for at least 4 people. You can hear some nice simmering there. So yeah, we're pretty much ready to serve this. And here's another moment where you can take some creative license. This could be served over a bed of rice or grains. It could be served with a little salad on the side. It could be served just as is with in a bowl. Like I was saying earlier, it would go great with either cornbread or corn chips on the side. So we're just going to serve this as kind of a soup or a stew, as you would. And you can top this as well. So some great toppings for chili. Sour cream or low-fat sour cream is a great option. Fresh cilantro, fresh scallions. Would all make really nice toppings, a little burst of color and flavor and texture on the top. And it's always nice too with a meal that's very heavily cooked like this to add a little burst of something fresh at the top. So there we go. So this, from the prepping of the vegetables, was roughly 10 minutes. Could be done even faster. And the cooking was roughly 20 minutes. And we're pretty much there. This is ready to serve. So very quick and hearty meal, and a cheat meal at that. I'm going to add a little bit of sour cream as a topping to this. And that is ready to serve. So there we go. I hope that that was inspirational or a good recipe that people might use moving forward. And yeah, so great. I'm curious to know if anyone wants to chime in who is cooking along, how that went.
Turned out pretty good. The aroma is very nice.
Great, great, cool.
I have.
Oops, sorry, Trang. I thought you were done. I just muted you.
I said I have no backup plan for dinner, so this has to work.
Good, good. I'm sure it'll be delicious. So if anyone has any questions too, you're welcome to put it in the chat, or because there are so few people, if you want to just unmute yourself, we can do that as well. Before folks go, this was a quick recipe, so we're actually, we'll be able to end a little bit before 7 if folks are ready. But I did want to ask if people have a moment to give us a quick evaluation of the class in the chat box, that would be great. This is the first in a series of monthly classes that we'll be offering in conjunction with Ellenville Regional Hospital and Cornell Cooperative Extension of Ulster County. So we're gonna really have a focus all winter on simple, cheap, healthy meals, often one pot meals or meals that are easy to prepare and easy to clean up. We'll be doing some one pot dishes. We'll be doing some baked dishes that are kind of a full dinner, easy full dinners. And yeah, so if you do want to put in the chat what you enjoyed about the class, would you recommend a future healthy cooking class to a friend or participate again? And is there anything that you would change about the class? And I want to mention again that we do have another class coming up. The next one is Thursday, December 10th from 6 to 7. We're going to be doing a curried squash soup like we were talking about at the beginning. This is a great way to use those fall and winter squashes. Many types. Butternut is kind of probably the most seen, but there's all sorts of acorn squashes and kabocha squashes and all sorts of different great squashes that make delicious creamy soups. They can also be baked. But we'll be making a nice bright orange curried squash soup. And let's see. So I realized too, let me just see. I realized that you guys won't actually be able to click this link because it's part of the presentation, but we can put it in the chat box for you. And if anybody has, I know this was a pretty simple recipe tonight that we were working on, but if anybody has any questions about this recipe or in general about the next classes coming up, I would love to answer any questions that anybody might have. Let's see. Oh, and thank you so much, everyone who's put some things in the chat. That's great. Oh, I see there was a question about chili powder that I missed earlier. Let's see. Marcia, was there a question about oh wait, you're muted. Let me unmute you. Great question. So, oh, Marcia? Okay, great. You'll type to me. Okay, great. So yeah, so there's a link in the chat box that you can copy and paste for the registration. Let's see, the info on the nutritional levels. I see that question, Raz. Yes. So yeah. So there is. Let's see, on the email that you got when you registered, the reminder email that you got when you registered, there is a link to this recipe in its original form. And this is from a website called Food Hero that's actually from a different extension agency. So if you go to that email that you used to get to this class tonight, you can go to their website and you can see they do have a nutrition box, a nutrition level for this recipe. So I don't actually know offhand right now how much protein is in it, but I believe that they would have that information. Yeah. Great, cool. Well, let's see. Well, I see earlier there was a question about chili powder. Did I miss the chili powder? Oh, okay. Just wondering about the chili powder. Okay, cool. Yeah, so great. Well, thank you so much, everybody. I hope that you enjoyed the class, and I hope that this is a recipe that can find a place in your weekly or monthly. Oh, and thank you, Trang, for coming. I see your message. So yeah, enjoy the food. Cool. Yeah, so I hope this is a recipe that people can add to their repertoire and feel like they could use this fall and winter. And thank you so much for coming. And I hope to see some of you again at our next class in December. And we'll keep it going. It's going to be, it's always going to be on Thursday, probably always from 6 to 7. And we'll be going through the winter. So thank you guys so much for attending. And I hope you enjoy your chili if you were cooking, and if you were just watching along for tonight, then I hope you enjoy this chili in the future. Okay. Have a good night, everybody.